Welcome to Daily Premier League Transfer News live with me, Barnaby Slater, Saturday afternoon. But I'm doing this video today because I didn't get the chance to do a video yesterday to discuss the fallout from the debacle of the Tottenham Hotspur 4-0 defeat to Liverpool. But also to tell you that every day from next week, I'll be doing my videos live at 12:30 every afternoon. So please do get involved and get in the chat whilst I do it. But more importantly, to the Premier League transfer news, the Prem's sporting directors are already back at it, sniffing about for the summer deals that may save their jobs. And Johan Lang is no different, with reports of Tottenham finally trying to shore up the midfield that so regularly gets opened up far too easily. Meanwhile, I'll also be discussing the fallout, as I mentioned, from that Liverpool debacle and bringing you the rest of the Premier League's transfer tattle. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for pressing like if you have already. If you haven't, please do give it a like. Let's get this seen by as many people as possible. And also, I'm only about 750 subscribers away from 15,000 now, guys. So if you like Premier League news, Premier League transfer news, always starting, of course, with my team, Tottenham Hotspur, then please do press subscribe. I really appreciate you joining my lovely community. We love having those chats in the comments section. Please do get involved. But I wanted to start it. I don't start by in case you're watching some other time, and I'm recording this early Saturday afternoon. I don't know if you guys saw the Jamie Donnelly goal from the halfway line for Leyton Orient against Manchester City. Donnelly obviously on loan from Tottenham Hotspur. Josh Keeley also in that first half. Anyway, I haven't watched the second half, but in the first half, Josh Keeley doing really well in goal for Leyton Orient, and that is exciting news potentially for the future of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. But let's get into those transfer rumours for Spurs. Some reports suggest that Tottenham will go again for Crystal Palace's Adam Wharton, the young England international who went there from Blackburn, as well as Southampton's Tyler Dibbling. So we're really going strong, aren't we, at the moment on this kind of young English, where possible, homegrown talent. And I do really like Adam Wharton. Tuasitala in the comments has just said, midfield, have we got one? Well, we don't at the moment, but that is probably why we're going for Adam Wharton, who is a kind of a classic number 6 in that he loves to kind of Michael Carrick-esque. He loves to get the ball off the back four, plays that kind of quarterback role. I really like him. But once again, we know from trying to get Eza out of Palace, Palace are in a good position where they're a regular Premier League club who do not need to sell their players. And so it will take huge bids, like the bid that we made for Mark Gay on transfer deadline day, up to £70 million, but not accepted by Palace because they simply do not need to take the money because they get so much from the Premier League broadcasting rights. Let me know in the comments, guys. What do you think about Adam Wharton? What do you think about Tyler Dibbling? Because that is the rumour that won't go away either. It looked like we wanted to get him in January, but Southampton were insisting on taking him back on loan for the rest of the season, which didn't really suit Spurs. So probably a lot of the discussions have been done with a mind for that happening in the summer. Some other kind of more left field reports coming out that Tottenham are also trying to enter into discussions with Leroy Sané, Bayern Munich's Leroy Sané's people, about getting him on a free transfer in the summer. His contract runs out, but I'm sure the 29-year-old will have many, many suitors, probably many, many suitors who can pay a lot more money than Tottenham can to get Leroy Sané through the door. So that is one that I think is probably more realistically coming from the left field a little bit. Adventurous724 says in the comments, what a goal from Donnelly. And Andrew Montgomery says, real shame Jamie's Donnelly's goal was put down as an own goal. What a strike. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, basically Donnelly hits it from just inside the halfway line, and Stefan Ortega in the Man City goal is backpedaling, and it hits the underside of the bar and then just kind of hits Ortega's back and goes in. So it was put down as an own goal, but a brilliant strike from the young Spurs loanee. And that's the kind of thing, honestly, at the top level that can really make or break people's careers. Not break someone's career, but it can make your career. The kind of confidence that brings him, and also just the fact that it was on live TV. So the world renown that Jamie Donnelly will now have, you can bet your bottom dollar that there'll be more interest in Jamie Donnelly's future now than there was ever before. Chelsea apparently think that Crystal Palace and England centre-back Mark Gay, who I just mentioned, will join them instead of Tottenham in the summer. I mean, you'd have to think, wouldn't you, that Chelsea, who Gay used to play for, by the way, they may even have some kind of buyback deal on him. And their centre-backs at Chelsea this season haven't been brilliant. They got Tosin, obviously, on a free transfer from Fulham. Spurs were interested in him, but he went to Chelsea in the end, and he hasn't really ripped up trees. Disasi, obviously, hasn't done well there, and has gone to Aston Villa on loan, another one that Tottenham are interested in. So Chelsea looking to go big in the summer for Gay. He'll only have a year left on his deal then. And, as sad as it is, I'm sure Chelsea will be willing and able to pay far more wages. So I'd probably agree with them that Gay is more likely to join Chelsea, but let's see what happens. Spurs, if the reports are to believe of Christian Romero, likely to be interesting Real Madrid, although some news on Real Madrid interest in other centre-backs coming later in this episode. But if Romero does leave, then I think Spurs will want to do what they did with Harry Kane, which is buy in who they think will be a replacement before he leaves. That's what they tried to do with Richarlison. Obviously, that hasn't worked out, but they will probably look to do a similar thing, and that's why I think they tried to get Mark Gay in. There is apparently a £62 million release clause inserted into Matheus Cunha's new deal at Wolves. It's a 4.5-year deal, but if anyone goes to £62 million for him, there will be no restrictions on which clubs can activate that deal, and he will then get a chance to move to that club if he's interested. So he's another one that was on Spurs' list. And let me know in the comments what you think about Matheus Cunha, and Mark Gahey. But Matheus Cunha, can you see him coming to Spurs now? I guess a lot will depend on how Matthias Tell's loan spell goes. What did you think of his first performance in that Liverpool game? He looked kind of smaller than I was expecting. I thought he was a bit taller, although I will say that the Liverpool team are absolute giants, especially in the back line who he was up against. So maybe that's why. I thought his first touch looked good. Thought he was popping it off well. I like the fact that he was trying to call his teammates into a press when none of the senior players were seemingly willing to do it. And obviously we didn't make him any chances, and we didn't really get to see a chance of or get to see him running at any of the defenders. But hopefully Tell's loan deal will go well. And now Richarlison's injured. He'll have to play from the start tomorrow night in the 9 position against Aston Villa, won't he? So let's get into the fallout from that Liverpool game, guys. Thank you to all of you watching this live. Please do press the like button if you haven't already. And for anyone not watching this live, as I mentioned, I will be doing all of my episodes now from next week at 12:30 every weekday live on YouTube. So come on in, get in the comments, and I will talk to you guys during the live episodes. Zainin Ottoman says, Kane back to Spurs. Is that a possibility? Well, I did talk earlier this week in one of my videos about the reveal this week that Harry Kane's release clause activates in a year's time, next January, and I think it's at £54 million. But that is for any club. But what happens then is if a club bid that and it activates, Tottenham have the chance to match it straight away. So that is an interesting one to see what happens in a year's time. £54 million for 32, 33-year-olds probably seems unlikely for Spurs, but you never know. Daniel Levy's heartstrings may be pulled, or he may need to get a buy-in like Harry Kane to defend him against all the protests about him. Now that Spurs are not going to win the Carabao Cup, which I thought was their best chance of winning any trophy, I think the heat is going to rise on Daniel Levy very, very quickly indeed. Anyway, so obviously Ange Postecoglou did a big press conference yesterday before the Villa Cup game, but of course he was asked a lot of questions about the Liverpool defeat. He'd hardly had any sleep. They only got in at 2 a.m. the morning before. The press conference was at 10:30. But he said this is what he said straight after the game. He said, the major lesson to learn is that we can't go into games like this looking to protect or try to get results in other ways than what has got us to this point. Now, this brings up an interesting question, and I've listened to, I listened yesterday to View from the Lane podcast, and I listened to The Fighting Cock, and I listened to The Tottenham Way. And if this question has been popping up a lot, and I wanted to ask my audience what you think. Do you think Tottenham played so passively against Liverpool because that is what Ange Postecoglou suggested to them? And I would say for the same question for the Brentford game as well. In these two games, do you think Spurs played so passively because Ange decided to change it and that is what he told the players to do? Or do you think it's a possibility that the players took it upon themselves to actually think the only way we've got a chance of winning away from home in the Premier League at Brentford and of getting a result against Liverpool is if we sit deep and play passively and do not play, what we call Ange ball? I do think we've got to an interesting point with Ange Postecoglou where I actually think there's a chance that the players, and probably leading with the senior players, have taken it upon themselves to maybe say, actually, we're going to sit deep, we're going to play passively because we're losing too easily, we're conceding too many goals. And obviously it's difficult because against Brentford, it worked. But then against Liverpool, we just went out with a whimper and it was ugly. And therefore, when Ange says this, it's a major lesson to learn that we don't go into games looking to protect. Is he saying, if you read it between the lines, is he saying to the players, No point doing that because you're going to lose anyway. So stick to what I'm telling you to play. Let me know what you think. Kieran Proper says in the comments, I doubt Ange said to play passive. I think our players are just so tired that it's hard for the players to play aggressively. Yep, that could also be a point. Excellent point there, Kieran. And thanks for writing it in. Writing in the comments. He also says this, Kieran, let's just get the win tomorrow to get the good feelings back in the club. We're still a favourites for the Europa League, and with our first team coming back for it, I think we have a great shot. Well, those of you who watch my videos regularly will know that my big problem and my big issue for Ange, and I'll say it again, I want it to work for Ange desperately. I really, really do. But it's the recurrence of the injuries. I mean, firstly, why are we getting so many injuries? And for the first time, I heard a theory the other night, which hadn't crossed my mind, but it's an interesting one. Obviously, under Pochettino and under Conte, we heard that they're the hardest managers in terms of getting the players to train ridiculously hard every single day. And I've been saying it must be kind of similar with Ange and his relentlessness, and that is what's causing the muscle injuries. But is there a possibility that he's not training them hard enough? And therefore, they're getting muscle injuries because then during games, they're expected to be relentless and never stop. And their bodies cannot cope with it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Meanwhile, obviously after the game, I think it's worth bringing this up because Jamie Redknapp was absolutely scathing about the performance. He said, I cannot remember a team in my lifetime who've gone down with less of a fight than Tottenham did tonight. Not a single shot on target in a semi-final second leg when you're trying to change the course of your history. I feel sorry for those young players. The manager, Jed Spence, played about 14 different positions tonight. I've never seen anything like it. There has been some lows for Tottenham this season against Everton, Palace, Leicester, Ipswich, but that scoreline, it's just horrendous. How do you feel about that, guys? Let me know in the comments, because I think he touches on a lot of interesting and probably correct things, but the fact that Jamie Redknapp is always so anti-Spurs since Harry Redknapp lost his job there, I think kind of counts against him. And also, Jamie Redknapp obviously used to play for Liverpool, so I think he was pretty desperate in that studio for that to happen. The studio at Sky Sports, by the way, for that game was Jamie Redknapp, Jamie Carragher, both ex-Liverpool players, and then poor old Michael Dawson, who's an ambassador for Spurs, just kind of sat there like a lemon, really, not being able to really stick up for Spurs in any way whatsoever. I mentioned Spence there and what Redknapp said about him. Just in the comments there, Yogi Berra said, Spence still looking awesome. So happy he's in the Europa squad now. Yeah, I will be getting to the Europa squad changes later in this episode, guys. So keep an eye out. But please do keep getting in the chat, guys. I'll try and engage with you as and when I can. So in yesterday's press conference, Ange Postecoglou was then asked if the players had anything about them, meaning, do they have the kind of fight and the balls to stick up for these for themselves in these kind of games? He said this: there's plenty about them. I get the pile on at the moment. It's really easy for people to stick their boot in and question the players and all that kind of stuff. That's not something I question. We were disappointed last night, didn't go the way we wanted to. We didn't really perform at the levels that we wanted to. This doesn't define this group of players by any stretch in my eyes. We'll go out there on Sunday and put in more of a performance that reflects where we're at. Well, let me know, guys. Do you think it's likely that we're going to put in a more front-footed performance against Villa away? The worry I have is that Aston Villa have a whole week off to prepare, don't they? They've not had a great record in the cup over recent years, Aston Villa. In fact, I think this is one of the first times they've made it through the third round in a long time. And they do have a few injuries as well, which is a really good thing. And I'll get into that later in the episode, actually. But I think it's just going to be hard, as was mentioned earlier on. Tottenham's players are so knackered. And once again, even though we were told that a number of the first-team players would come back in early February, none of them back. And Richarlison getting a recurrence of his injury as well. So they're going to be knackered as well. And maybe as was mentioned in the comments earlier, maybe it will just be a matter of having to play a bit deep because they do not have the strength or the energy to go through and put a front foot performance in. Binny Guy says in the comments, Dr. Tottenham will visit tomorrow and Rashford will score. Yeah, I do worry about the kind of Sky Sports script where they'll be desperate for Marcus Rashford to have an unbelievable game, won't they? Some talk after the game against Liverpool was that the senior players didn't step up, and it was actually only the younger players like Spence, like Archie Gray, who put in effort, and Bergvall in the second half. And said this, he said, I don't put any responsibility on the senior players in the game or for the result. As a collective, we just didn't tackle the challenge we had last night in the manner we needed to. That's not on the senior players. As a collective, the senior players are carrying us through this in many respects, because I don't know how many players were playing their first game at Anfield last night. So all these kind of things you try to prepare the group for, but it's fair to say we didn't handle the situation well. I've got no issue with the senior players, and we don't have many out there, to be honest. Certainly, they are trying as hard as they can. And from my perspective, my role is to try to support and provide the guidance so we can make amends for a poor performance. Listen, I think there's a chance here. Let me know what you think. But Ange Postecoglou does not have the money in the bank to start slagging off his players like he did, say, after the Arsenal performance when he said it was totally unacceptable, or when he picked out Timo Werner individually that one time. He does not have enough collateral with the board or the fan base at the moment in terms of the safety of his job, basically. And therefore, he has to kind of come out and protect the senior players, doesn't he? And he does that, and it's probably the right thing to do realistically. But I have to say that performance in the first half, maybe I'm being unfair to call Pap Sarr a senior player, but he's been at the club a few years now. But certainly Bentancur and Bissouma's performance was not up to scratch. They didn't provide the energy. I thought that I genuinely thought on paper it was the right midfield decision, like energy and legs and experience. But they were just absolutely run ragged by the Liverpool midfield, to the point where after the after the watch along, when I did a fan show on Chris Cowlin's channel, I was being shouted at by a fan of his. And I suggested actually that I thought Ange Postecoglou should have made a change as early as about 10 or 15 minutes into that game and brought another man into Spurs' midfield, just so that we had the chance to play some football and get our foot on the ball. But that obviously didn't happen, and we just did not get a kick in the entire game. And it was very, very disappointing. Phil C has just come in the chat. Thanks for writing, Phil. He says it's possible that Ollie Watkins won't be available for the game against Spurs. Yeah, I'm going to be bringing you the team news from both sides for that Aston Villa game later in this episode. But yes, Unai Emery has said actually that I don't think Ollie Watkins will play in that game. Ange Postecoglou in his press conference was asked on how much time it might take to bridge the gap to Liverpool. He said this: I know that it's this all kind of reactive to last night, and I get it. Everyone saw there was a big gap between us and Liverpool. But Vicario, Romero, Destiny, Van der Ven, Solanke, Wilson Odobert, I could go on and on. We had 10 missing last night. Senior players, but you take 7 or 8 key players out of any team and you are playing the best team in the world who are at their best. I don't think you make judgments in these moments. I get that it dulls the senses after a while when you say the same thing week after week, and it sounds like it is what it is, but that's the reality of our situation. A lot of the players I mentioned, Maddison, Brennan Johnson, I don't make judgments on last night apart from the fact we didn't perform in the manner we wanted to. Even if we did, we may not have won anyway. But the disappointing thing is we just didn't play the way we wanted to, so we need to address that. Listen, interesting, isn't it, on the day that Leyton Orient are doing well against Manchester City in the Cup under their manager, who a couple of weeks ago said, didn't he, I'm not going to make excuses for a loss. I'm not Ange Postecoglou, which he has since been very embarrassed by and tried to apologize to Ange Postecoglou. And I'll bring you Ange's quote about that later in the episode, actually. But when he reads out the list of all the players who are injured, like he just did in that quote, he's got a point, hasn't he? And we always, I don't know, this is the way I look at it a little bit. And it's very difficult for me straight after games because I was very angry after the Liverpool game. We didn't lay a glove on them. We didn't put any challenges in. We didn't get a shot on target. And I was angry. And I think everybody has the right to be angry. But when you look at it after a couple of days, and it does help, and then you hear a quote like that where you literally hear the names of the players who are not available in the squad, you do realize how difficult it is. And if you think back to all the Europa League games we played down the years, and even some of those Europa Conference League games we played, and the Carabao Cup games we played, where we have basically played reserve teams, or we've mixed and matched a few first team players with a lot of kind of second tier players in our squad. You never get any rhythm, do you? You never get any rhythm in those games. We never roll teams over, really, and it's always very difficult. And basically, for the last 2-3 months, we've been playing with teams at best like that, players who wouldn't be in the first team. And as Binny Guy says in the comments, how can we impact with teens? And I think that's right. And I'm coming around to it, but it's just very difficult after games like that against Liverpool, where we just get turned over so easily. It's so difficult to feel that way because the hurt is so strong. Ange was then asked about Kevin Danso's debut. He said, I thought Kevin was really good. I thought Matthias Tell was good too, considering we were throwing him in a difficult night. I'm sure they'll help us. I'm sure they'll feel better after last night, getting that first game under their belts and moving on from there. What did you guys think of Kevin Danso? He looks like a big, strong boy. I thought his passing was better than I expected it. He was brave. I think he made kind of one pass trying to get it between the lines that was blocked out and nearly led to a chance. But I don't mind that. That's what Ange Ball is all about. And that's what we've really missed a lot of the time since Romero and Van der Ven have been out. And And he showed me enough in that game to show that he's better with the ball at his feet than Radu Dragusin is at the moment. Obviously, Dragusin's a lot younger, so there's a chance that Dragusin can kind of learn that and get braver as he gets older and as he kind of finds himself more up the hierarchy of the Spurs squads. Quite a lot of people are calling for Dragusin after his injury to be sold. I think it's too early for that. I think he's a young player into his first 18 months in the Premier League. And he's still learning how to be a centre-back, let alone how to be a Premier League centre-back. So on that basis, I think we give Dragusin time. But I think for the meantime, Danso looks like a good replacement and good in the air as well. I like that about him. Obviously, as I've mentioned earlier in this episode, Richarlison injured yet again. Anne said this about it. It's disappointing for him. And, obviously he was emotional last night because he worked really hard to get himself back. But again, it's another setback that he's going to have to deal with, that we're going to have to deal with, and hopefully we get him back as soon as possible. I've been saying this for 6 months, probably longer, 8 months. Richarlison, he doesn't get on the pitch nearly enough for Spurs. And I think Ange Postecoglou will try and cut him loose as quickly as he can, like he did with Giovanni Lo Celso. Lo Celso often did well when he came on the pitch for Spurs, when he played that goal against Man City last season, but he doesn't get on the pitch nearly enough. And as a result, Ange, I think, will let Richarlison go like he did Lo Celso. I don't know what kind of money we'll be able to get for him. The only way we'll be able to get anywhere near the money back we paid for him is if he goes to Saudi Arabia, but I don't get the sense that he will. I'll keep going with my Spurs news in a second, but at the moment, guys, 30 likes. Let's get some more likes going. Press that like button. Let's get this live show seen by as many people as possible. Once again, I will be doing all of my content next week live every day at 12:30. So hopefully during your lunch times in the office. So make a note, guys. 12:30 every day for my daily Premier League Tottenham transfer news and news from other Premier League clubs. Ali Gold came out yesterday and said that Rodrigo Bentancur was seen heading down the tunnel straight after that Liverpool game, but Lucas Bergvall went up to him and reminded him to go and acknowledge the away support. I mean, it really shouldn't be up to teenagers to have to go and tell the senior players to come back and clap the away support, should it? But yeah, maybe that's just a reality because Bentancur said had such a difficult evening and he just wanted to get out of there. Binny Guy says, no offense, Barnaby, we have to admit that we bought so many wrong players. That's an interesting comment. Who are the players, Binny Guy? Let me know in the comments. Oh yeah, okay, you're going Richarlison, Johnson, etc. I think Johnson's still a young player. I've said there about Richarlison, he doesn't get on the pitch nearly enough. Johnson is still a young player. He's played far too many minutes. He should be a squad player. He will be lethal when we get all of our players fit, if and when we get all of our players fit. Brennan Johnson will be an absolutely lethal option off the bench when opposition teams are getting tired and there are gaps. And then that's where his confidence can really rise. I think with Johnson, in the last 2 months before he got injured, he just looked so spent. He'd played far too many minutes. He looked completely knackered. And as a result, that's probably why he got injured. He was in the red zone. He gets his muscular injury and he's out. So hopefully when he comes back, he won't get re-injured and he'll be fit again to kind of really utilize what he's got. He's really elite when it comes to crossing across the box, getting in at the back post, and he's a good finisher as well, Brennan Johnson. So I'm not, it's totally okay for you, Benny Guy, to think he's not a great player, but I think he is going to turn out to be a really excellent Spurs player. He's only 22. Do not forget that. Maybe even not even that. Postecoglou was then asked on the possibility of injured players returning soon. He said this: the ones who are definitely close are Vicario, Destiny Udogie, Wilson Odobert, James Maddison, and Brennan Johnson at a stretch. They should all be back by midweek next week in terms of training or the week after. Over the next 2 weeks, they should be available. Van de Ven will probably be a bit of a slow burner. Now, I want to talk about the Van de Ven thing. It's fishy, isn't it? It's fishy. It was said after he had the 45 minutes that he felt good, and then later that week, he said he felt he wasn't up to playing in the Premier League. Ange then said in a press conference he hadn't re-injured himself. However, now it's going to be a slow burner. What do you think that means? Let me know in the comments. I'm really confused by what's happening with Van de Ven. If it's the case that they just are so desperate for him not to re-injure his hamstring again, and they're trying to build up as much strength into it as they can, then give it another month as far as I'm concerned. In fact, don't bring him back before the Europa League. There's really no point. The Europa League is basically all we've got now. It's our only chance to get into the Champions League, and I think mother Van de Ven until the Europa League time. As Yogi Bear says in the comments, got to baby those hamstrings. I completely agree. But tell us that. Do you know what I mean? Like, just tell us that. Say, I want Ange to come out and say, look, he's had, 3 hamstring injuries in the time I've been here, and we just want him for the Europa League run. So, he had 45 minutes. It felt a bit sore, so we're going to baby him, exactly as Yogi Bear says. Gary Beck says, seeing a lot of rumours that both Van de Ven and QT won't play again this season. I'm hearing some of those rumours true, but I don't know why now that the transfer window is shut, why Ange Postecoglou wouldn't be just saying that if that's the case. Unless Ange is now trying to defend himself because of his injury record, the injury record of the players since he's been there. I don't know. I can't really, I can't really say I think those rumours are true. I think they're just probably rumours, but let's see what happens. Ange was then asked in the press conference about getting back to playing our football, by which they mean Ange ball. He said, yes, look, that is probably our main objective now, to play a little bit more like ourselves. It won't be easy because Aston Villa are a good side and playing at home. Again, it will be a challenge with literally the same group of players backing up, but there is an opportunity for us there, and we want to make sure we tackle that opportunity in the right way. How do you guys feel about this game tomorrow night? Do you want Spurs to go out on the front foot and try and control the game? Or do you think our best chance of winning it is to sit back and try and hit them on the break? I don't know. It's very difficult to know. And as mentioned earlier in this episode, in the comments, maybe we're just too tired to go at it on the front foot. Who knows? Kieran Proper says about Van de Ven in the comments, yeah, I think it seems like we've decided that Europa League is our main focus. So anyone that's iffy, we just hold off until our Europa League run. If that's the case, maybe it is. Are you glad about that, guys? Let me know what you think. Is that the right decision to make? Or are we, if we are doing that, are we then basically tossing off the Premier League, if you excuse the phrase, and just saying, okay, we're not going to get relegated, but we're not going to improve much? I'm not really sure. I really don't know. Andrew was then asked on how the next 2 midweeks look without fixtures for the first time in a long time. Yeah, so for the next 2 weeks, we don't have midweek fixtures, and that's for the first time in about 3 months, which is completely mad, isn't it? And said this, we'll assess that after Sunday. We've got 2 clear weeks. There's a number of players who are scheduled to come back during that time. So we'll use it wisely to rest the guys who need rest. And certainly there's a fair few of them that need some rest, and also hopefully get some work into the guys who've been out for quite a while to be ready for the challenge ahead, because I think these 2 weeks we've got now will be really valuable for the finish of our season. Listen, quite a lot of the Premier League clubs have been on warm weather training trips to Dubai over the last couple of weeks. If I was Ange, I would send all those players who've got injured, just send them somewhere hot and nice and say, go and have a holiday for 4 or 5 days, and then come back and use the second week to kind of really drill back into the players' Ange ball, because there hasn't been much training at all over the last few months because they're just recovering between each game. So what I would say is just let them have a little bit of warm weather break, let them relax, get them in the ice baths, get them in the swimming pool, get some sun on their skin, and then bring them back for the second week and get some proper Ange ball training back into them, because we've kind of lost our way a little bit. I think we've lost our way in playing on the front foot, in scaring opposition teams, and we need to do that in the second half of the season. Jed Spence, I'm sure you saw on Instagram, he said the following about the Liverpool result and performance. He said, needed more fight, much more. I mean, that's pretty unsubtle from Jed Spence. He was pretty much the only player I thought who was fighting hard, and I thought he played really, really well. So good to see him coming out. And listen, Jed Spence has made himself into a proper fixture in this Tottenham squad now. I wonder whether he will really start when Destiny Udogie comes back in front of Porro in that right back slot, or maybe even ahead of Udogie in the left back spot. It's going to be good to have some options, though, assuming obviously Udogie or Porro or Spence doesn't get injured or re-injured. Ange was asked whether he was confident of getting a reaction at Aston Villa in the game tomorrow afternoon. He said, like I said, I have a great deal of belief in this group of players and what they're going through and how they're dealing with it. They were disappointed. We're all disappointed, but we'll learn from it and we'll move on. He was asked if there's extra pressure at Villa after the Anfield result. He said, I think it's the same pressure. It's a knockout game, so you've got to get a result to progress. And had it gone any better last night, it wouldn't have made any difference to Sunday. Sorry. It's still a game you have to win to progress, so the pressure's the same. Listen, I think the Aston Villa game is absolutely huge for Ange Postecoglou. I do think there's a chance. Let me know if you agree in the comments. I do think there's a chance he might get sacked if he loses to Villa. We've got Man United next week, and I think maybe Levy might think our best chance in the Europa League is with someone else coming in. I don't know if I agree. I want it to work so badly for Ange, and there just doesn't seem to be anyone who that Tottenham could get in. But I don't know, how many games can Ange kind of lose, really? in these big games. You know, we all had our mind when we went through that terrible run just before the Brentford game. We were all like, well, at least we got the Carabao Cup semi-final. It feels like we're going to go there and get to Wembley, and then we just got absolutely punished. And it won't have gone unnoticed in the boardroom. Gary Beck says in the comments, no, he won't be sacked. Gary, tell me why you don't think he'll get sacked. I don't know. I think Daniel Levy, you know, he's listened to what the fans have said, which is it's not Ange's fault, it's your fault. Don't sack him. But how far can it go? Yogi Bear says if we lose to Villa, I'm going to be annoyed. I mean, I think that'll be an understatement to go out of both cup competitions in 1 week. Kieran Proper says, I don't think he'll be sacked at this point unless we get knocked out of the Europa League. Well, that's not till March, though. You know, it's like we're in 14th in the league. If we go out of both of these cup competitions, there's a lot of pressure on that Europa League run there. I don't know. I guess what you're saying maybe is he'll be given the opportunity to get the team back. But the problem, like I've said, and I sound like a broken record, but the problem is that it's the re-injuries, the recurrence of the injuries. So there's no evidence whatsoever to suggest that when the players who are injured now come back, that they will not get re-injured straight away. That's the problem. Andrew was asked if it's a good thing that Sunday's FA Cup tie against Villa comes around so quickly. He was pretty sarcastic. He said, we're 48 hours away from a game. I would much rather have had 8 days to prepare like the other teams. Gary Beck says there's no one. This is the reason why he thinks Andrew won't get sacked. No one out there. Players came specifically after talking to him. Why back him in January? He starts next season, mark my words. Well, listen, if that's the case, and I know it would never happen, but I would love Daniel Levy or Johan Lang to come out and say, listen, the manager's going nowhere and he's going to be our manager till next season as well. And really back him, not just in terms of the money spent in the window, but with words as well. That would be a brave move, but I think that would be something that would actually be appreciated by the majority of the fan base. But yeah, I don't know if it can happen. I'm just going to go into the Aston Villa team news and stuff now, but relevantly, Rabbi Jokinen says in the comments, Villa is a 90% loss. We need insane luck like we had against Brentford to have a chance. I don't know if it's 90%, and I'll let you know why, because we're about to go into the team news. Unai Emery has revealed that in addition to Matty Cash, Pau Torres, Ross Barkley, and Tyrone Ming still being out, Ollie Watkins is also out and will miss the Spurs game, as was mentioned in the comments earlier. Emery said this, we're going to work tomorrow, but at the beginning we have out and not available for Sunday all of those players. For Ollie Watkins, each day is important, how he is feeling, but for Sunday, he's not going to be available because today he didn't train. Hopefully for next week, he will be available. Also, Axel Disasi, their new loan signing from Chelsea, will miss it, having represented them in the FA Cup already this season. And they are in line for 2 debuts for Aston Villa, Marco Asensio and Marcus Rashford. And as I mentioned already in this episode, that is where the Sky Sports script will be, won't it? Marcus Rashford having a great performance and sticking a finger up to Manchester United. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Guys, we're on 47 likes for this live video. Let's get to, if you haven't pressed a like already, please do press that like button. Let's get up to 50 likes. The more likes we get, the more people will be able to see these live videos. And once again, I will be doing all of my daily content next week at 12:30 every afternoon live on YouTube so that we can get chatting to the audience during the videos as well. So please do keep a note out for that. I'll be doing my daily Premier League transfer videos, always, of course, starting with Tottenham Hotspur and bringing you all the Tottenham news every afternoon at 12:30. So if you're at work, you can watch it whilst having your sandwiches at lunch. Unai Emery was asked about facing Spurs in the Cup. He said, I have respect for Tottenham, huge respect. They have some players injured and some doubts during the league season, but they have a very good team. The coach showed his capacity in playing very good football last year and sometimes this year too. We lost against them in the only league match. We played 4-1 and they played fantastically. On Sunday, I'm waiting for them, expecting from them their best performance. We watched the match yesterday against Liverpool. We're going to analyse not only that, but the match they played before. They have players out with injury, but their players are going to be very available for Sunday, are very good players. They have all of my respect. Yeah, I mean, he's just saying what he has to say there, really, Unai Emery, isn't he? But I think it's going to be a tough game. I really do. I think all we can kind of hope for is that Aston Villa, still being in the Champions League and having made it into the top 8 of their group in the Champions League, kind of don't see the FA Cup as that important to them. That is all I can hope, and that maybe their motivation levels are low. But I kind of expected that from Liverpool in the second leg of that Carabao Cup semi-final, and I was completely wrong. Liverpool was so motivated, really motivated. Ange was asked about proving people wrong at Villa. Ange said this, no, because I don't know which people I'm meant to be proving wrong. Ange getting quite bullish in the press conference. He said, I said last night, it's irrelevant to me what other people's opinions are. People are on the TV and the radio and in the newspapers to give opinions, and I respect that. They're allowed to do that, but I don't have any obligation to listen to any of it. to get fueled by the comments of people I've never even met. I don't know how you live your life, but I certainly don't live my life that way. That's with all respect that they're there to give an opinion. It's not like I want to be successful here so I can go to these people and say to them, look, you're wrong. I don't even know them. Why would I care where they think we're at? They're a million miles away from us, but they're allowed to have their opinion. We're an easy mark at the moment. And look, after last night, meaning the Liverpool game, there are times you've got to just take it, keep your counsel and atone for it in the way that only matters. And that is with playing the football that I know we can. So bullish from Ange Postecoglou there, saying he doesn't care what the likes of Jamie Redknapp and Jamie Carragher are saying, and he wants to prove them wrong on the pitch. I, for one, hope he's right. He was also asked in the press conference about taking criticism on his shoulders. He said, no, it's not about taking it on my shoulders. As I said last night, it doesn't really direct me what I do or what I think. We're an easy mark at the moment. I get that. By easy mark, that's kind of a phrase, isn't it? To say basically we're an easy target. Obviously, making a semi-final is an absolute disaster because we didn't play well last night. I assume not making the semi-final would have put us in a better place, being sarcastic again there, Ange. But that's the way people are seeing us at the moment. We're an easy mark, like I said. When we have a disappointing night like we did, it gives an opportunity for everyone to go as hard as they can. That's fine. There's only one way to change that, and that's with us just getting back out there and playing the football I know we can and getting a result on Sunday. Well, listen, I would do anything for us to get a result on Sunday, tomorrow night against Aston Villa away. It would really I think it would bring some confidence back for the rest of the season. However, two things. One, I really fear that it's going to be incredibly difficult to get that result. And secondly, Liverpool's still in the competition. Like, what are we going to do? Just hope we don't ever have to play Liverpool again, or just hope that we can only play Liverpool or one of the top teams if we get past Aston Villa, if it's like past March when we've got all of our players back, and assuming and hoping that they don't get re-injured. Has Spur TV, thanks for commenting, mate. He says, we need to hope that they have an off day, but Rashford will probably start and score. He's going to be out to prove a point. Players we have can get a result, but with these poor / lack of tactics, less likely. Simon Cohen says, hi, Barnaby. Just watched the Orient game. Keeley played well. Yeah, Josh Keeley in goal. Leighton Orient lost 2-1 at home to Man City, but put up a great fight. And as I said at the beginning of this episode, if you didn't see it, go and check out Jamie Donnelly's strike from early in the game where he chipped Stefan Ortega from the halfway line pretty much. Absolutely unbelievable. And now just onto that news that I mentioned at the top, and as was talked about in the comments, Spurs have announced their changes for the Europa League squad. Jed Spence, Matthias Tell and Kevin Danso have been added, and it's Fraser Forster, Timo Werner and Radu Dragusin who have made way for them. Now, as I mentioned in a video yesterday, there are some reports that if Tottenham were to lose Vicario to injury, they might be able to bring in another goalkeeper, which would be, of course, Tony Kinski in that case. Let me know in the comments if you know any more about that, because I actually don't know it for sure. It's just something I heard on the Extra Inch podcast. If you don't listen to the Extra Inch, make sure you do. It's the best Tottenham podcast for kind of tactics and stuff like that. But other than that, if that's not the case, I think Antonin Kinski would probably be a bit annoyed. I'm sure when he joined the team, he would have been told, you'll be in the squad if we get through to the last 16 of the Europa League. But now he's not. And Fraser Forster, Werner and Dragusin have been taken out. Well, Dragusin obviously injured for the rest of the season, so that makes sense. Werner, I think it's just shown how far his stock has fallen. And Fraser Forster now has been replaced in the pecking order by Brandon Austin. And as Nick in Hong Kong says in the comments, surely Austin is good enough. I think he's fine, but I'd rather have Kinski as a backup in the Europa League, if that is a possibility in terms of kind of using the rules, the Europa League. The Europa rules, sorry, in that instance. I'm not really sure what the situation is. And then, as I mentioned, it was the Leighton Orient manager, Richie Wellens, who had said about Ange Postecoglou earlier, a month or so ago, I won't be making excuses. And Ange was asked, like Ange Postecoglou, and actually Richie Wellens has tried to call Ange Postecoglou apparently to apologise, but has not had any answer. And Ange Postecoglou was asked about it in his press conference, and he just said this: he's had his 5 minutes. That's good enough for me. So clearly Ange Postecoglou took that quite personally, what Richie Wellens did, and not willing to accept his apology, which arguably I would say is a little bit not a great look for Ange. But as JJJ says in the comments, he says he can F off. Listen, I can see how people would feel differently about it. Let's see what happens. Just before I get into the other Premier League transfer news, guys, once again, please do give this video a like if you're watching on YouTube. Also, I'm bringing you daily Premier League transfer news, always starting with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur, and I'll bring you all the news from them and other Premier League news as well. So please do give me a subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. I'm getting really close to 15,000 subscribers now, only about 750 away. Let's get me up there. I really appreciate all of your support. You can also listen to this, guys, on the audio podcast platform, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever. Just type in the Spurred On podcast and give me a follow or a subscribe there. Just before I get into the other Premier League transfer news, I'll go into the comments. Gary Beck says Kinski is 21. He'd have been promised minutes, but that's it. He isn't Jan Oblak yet. No, he's not. But I do like his starting position. I like his distribution. I like his bravery on the ball. I think Brandon Austin has done well whenever he's come in for Spurs. But I think Kinski is a better option for now in terms of how he kind of pushes us up the pitch. Kate Rixham, thanks for your comments. Says Sonny, we need to try and put a shift in. Sonny needs to try and put a shift in, not a lackluster performance. He needs to pass the ball, not keep giving it away. We also need to put the ball in there. Well, yeah, all good points. I think Sonny's just knackered, isn't he? He's played so many minutes. He's into his 30s now. His legs are just absolutely spent, and we need more players back from injury so we can rest Sonny a little bit. Nick in Hong Kong says, did Sonny stop tackling after he accidentally broke that guy's leg a while ago? Talking about the Everton player, Gomez, aren't you? Is it Gomez? Was that his name, the Everton player? Anyway, it wasn't really even Sonny's tackle, was it? But no, Sonny's never really been a big tackler. Let's put it that way. Phil C says regarding the Aston Villa game, there's no way Rashford is match fit. He played his last competitive game back on December the 12th. Yeah, so maybe that means Rashford is more likely to start on the bench. Nick in Hong Kong, though, says Rashford hasn't scored for ages, so he'll net for sure. And Simon Cohen says about the Aston Villa game, drop Bissouma and play Bergvall tomorrow. I would agree. I'd probably play Bergvall. Would it be in front of instead of Bissouma? I'd probably still start with Bissouma and Bentancur, and maybe play Bergvall in the midfield with them, or bring Kulusevski into the midfield as the 8/10 and maybe play Tell starting off the right and Sonny on the left. But no, Tell actually will have to play as the number 9. So no, probably Kulusevski will have to start on the right and Berg will come into midfield maybe for Sarr. I don't think Sarr's been in great form whatsoever, I have to say. But who knows? Who knows? Okay, going into some other Premier League transfer news. For me, maybe it doesn't interest you guys, and that's fine. But for me, I'm always interested to see what the other clubs are looking at doing in the transfer market. So rumours from Old Trafford that United are considering a move for Ipswich Town's Liam Delap, who's been on Tottenham's list as well. That's if they're unable to sign Sporting's Victor Gyökeres or Galatasaray and Napoli's Victor Osimhen in the summer. Manchester City keen to strengthen their squad and have set their sights on the Atalanta and Brazilian midfielder who was also on Tottenham's list, Ederson. As I said at the top of the show, we're looking at Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace. So it looks like maybe Ederson, who was on our list, is going somewhere who are willing to pay more wages. Chelsea and Newcastle and Man United apparently interested in Crystal Palace and French striker Jean-Philippe Mateta, who has yet to sign a new contract at Crystal Palace. I never really rated Mateta, but he's having a brilliant season, isn't he? Chelsea expected to lower their asking price for Keenan Dewsbury Hall. He's had a terrible time at Chelsea since signing from Leicester. He was one of the players I kind of thought Tottenham might have been interested in before he went to Chelsea. Newcastle apparently value Alexander Isak at £150 million. That is where the South Londoners are going to have to go if they are willing, if they are interested in taking Alexander Isak. And of course, Isak will be on such a high wage at Newcastle because of Saudi. I don't think that's going to be a problem for them to keep him there if he doesn't want to leave. Newcastle have apparently rejected a bid from Galatasaray for Kieran Trippier. I want to give some props to Kieran Trippier. He had an amazing game against Arsenal in that League Cup final second leg the other night. Really got in their faces, and I thought there was a lot of Spurs in him that night. Meanwhile, Borussia Dortmund may have to sell 20-year-old English winger Jamie Gittens, who's a target for Liverpool, United and Chelsea if they don't qualify for the Champions League. He's a player that I really like, but probably above Spurs' pay grade at the moment. And talking about the South Londoners, and I mentioned it earlier in this live episode, Real Madrid are viewing the signing of Arsenal centre-back William Saliba as their priority, but Arsenal would require a world record fee if they are to sell the 23-year-old. Okay, guys, thank you so much for getting involved in this live show. As I mentioned, this is the first of all of my content for the next while going to be live every weekday, 12:30 in the afternoon on YouTube. I'll be bringing you the daily Premier League transfer news, always starting with transfer talk from Tottenham Hotspur and bringing you all the Spurs news and then the other Premier League transfer tittle-tattle. Do give this video a like if you haven't already on YouTube. Please do press subscribe if you're not already a subscriber to my channel, as I mentioned, or getting closer and closer to the 15,000 subscriber mark. It's such a great community, guys. Really value all of you getting in the comments. Love chatting with you guys. And from Monday onwards, going to be able to do it live every single day at 12:30 for about half an hour, 40 minutes every afternoon. So come and enjoy it with your lunch. And looking forward to chatting to you. Have a great weekend, and let's hope for a big Spurs win at Aston Villa tomorrow night. Come on, you Spurs.